morning, I'm Jay Baisley, your town supervisor. Today we're having an interview with Tom Colgan, who's currently our administrator of our water department, and this is part of the mini-series inside Town Hall. Good morning, Thomas. How are you today?
Good morning, Jay. How are you?
Good. Could you give me a little bit of a insight of how the water department works, how many gallons a day we use, where our water starts, and how it gets through the system?
Okay, our the joint-owned city-town treatment plant is the source of the water. The mighty Hudson River is where it all begins, and it gets processed in the plant, and then comes into the town at our Fairview pump station, which we average about 6 to 7 million gallons a day, depending on the time of year. And from there, it gets distributed throughout the whole town to our main storage tank on Route 44. From the 44 tank, water goes out throughout the system. We also have another tank on the south end of town called the Spat and Kill tank, which is another 5 million gallon reserve tank that gives us a capacity of 10 million gallons of water storage at a optimum full level.
Tom, along the line with the complicated process of the water starting at the Hudson River, which you say 7 million gallons a day, is basically a spoonful in the Hudson River, where we can almost say it's an unlimited source, but to be extremely careful what goes on in the Hudson River, we go through a heavy process of making sure the water is as clean as possible. We've done major upgrades to that plant, but going through it, people don't realize the size of the system and what we have underground. We have some pipes I know are 36 inches round, going down to 6, 8, 10 inches, and the complexity of the system. You're going from the two 5 million gallon tanks that we have to going down. We have stations in between there for different reasons. Can you explain what some of those are?
Yeah, so the system is built up of transmission mains, which the main trunk line coming into the town is a 36-inch water main. From there, it goes to a 30-inch water main. And then from there, you go down to a 20, a 24, are your major transmission mains that we have throughout the town. That's all ductile iron pipe. And then we drop down to 12s and 10s and 8s, 4s, 6s as it goes into the residential areas. All said and done, it is just a little bit over 210 miles of pipe in the ground, ranging from cast iron, ductile iron, transite, which is on top of all that stuff, you have just about 2,000 fire hydrants connected to all those water mains for fire protection and flushing and all those purposes.
And those hydrants are tested to make sure they meet firefighting capabilities?
Yep, everything is operated over a 3-year period. We work in zones, servicing, painting fire hydrants, replacing them as they're needed. Because the town-wide water went through in 1971, there was eight original well districts that were combined, so we have about 8 different brands of fire hydrants that we work on, which is interesting at times, just because the age of everything when it was installed to today's time. The water system is coming up on its 50th birthday here pretty quick. Next year will be 50 years for town-wide water.
With that said, what you said, Tom, about town-wide water, I think we are the only town in the town that has town-wide water, if I'm not correct, which was put back in the 70s.
Yeah, I don't know of too many other ones that are as full as us, because every town resident has the opportunity to look at town water.
And our water rates are some of the most reasonably priced rates in the county. And to have town-wide water, and you realize that the water comes in, and Marist College travels all the way out 44 through the town, down through different avenues, and it goes down as far as New Hamburg, the southernmost end of the town. So your water takes a huge route to get to where it has to go, and to make sure that it's safe to drink. That process is very complicated also. You flush lines at different times and do different things along that line.
Yeah, we're constantly moving water. The 44 tank moves on its own on demand. The Spat and Kill tank, we move water in and out of there weekly. So we just have to, you got to keep everything moving. It keeps your best quality of water. We're constantly flushing fire hydrants, pulling water to the areas where there's less demand to keep that constant turnover. We have a few different pump stations that are out there for the areas that are higher elevation. And then we have other spots where we have pressure reducing stations for where the water pressure is too high. The system's kind of a gravity fed system, so at the lowest parts of the town end up to have a higher pressure. So we have to not reduce the pressure before it goes into the houses.
And then along that line, you said, the pressure reducing stations, this is basic maintenance.
Correct.
With the staff that you have, they're constantly out there. You can see, you look and you may only see a pipe in the ground, but there could be a pressure reducing station underground there where people may not even be familiar with what is going past their house or what's in their neighborhood.
Yeah, there's 15 of us that work at the water department, and we on a day-to-day we're usually pretty busy. Between maintenance and stuff, meters that have to be done. We did to mark out all our water lines for any kind of construction work that goes on. And just it all goes pretty quick.
And along the line, what you said is, markouts, which our water department, sewer department are always out doing markouts. People have to understand how important it is to make sure you do call before you dig, because the line you hit, you may think it's just your water line coming in the house. The way the systems are, and as Tom said, the multiple systems we have over the years, there's water lines in places where people aren't familiar that that's where they are. So the call before you dig is definitely something that needs to be done and taken very serious, whether it's a fence you're putting in or just digging a hole in your yard that's too big. You want to make sure that they are calling the dig and your contracts are following all those procedures.
Yeah, it is very important. I mean, we respond to all emergency markouts since we are town-wide. So, I mean, some things may be private if it's in a complex or something like that, but for the most part, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're responding to those calls. It's very important that people call into markouts because there's a lot of different utilities at different depths, and something as simple as putting in a mailbox could cause a serious problem.
Yeah, people don't realize that not every line is 4 feet underground either.
Right.
Different lines are different heights, sewer lines, water lines, electrical lines,
Gas.
telecommunication lines. There's so much stuff underground that people aren't familiar with. And along that line, we take the seriousness of our water and the supply of water to an extreme, beyond extreme. The town has only had one source of water for the last 15 years, which has been the mighty Hudson River. And with the Central Hudson doing a dredging project in the river, we realize how important it is to have a second source. And Tom, you've taken it upon yourself and with our direction to reactivate wells that we had 15, 16 years ago deactivated, to bring them back up so we have a second source of water. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, well, back in the 1980s, the town put in 3 wells, they're called the Frank Brother wells, and they ran up until the early 2000s, and then they were decommissioned. Not for any particular reason or any of that, but just there was needed repairs and whatever. It didn't make sense to do it at the time. But now when the dredging was coming up, everyone thought that'd be a good idea to put them back online, bring them up to date, which would be rehab the pump station, rehab the wells, basically bringing everything up into 2020 standards, which we're just about complete with now. Hopefully by the beginning of December, we should be pretty much online. If we have to be, we're ready to go with that. And we'll be able to exercise them continuously, monthly, weekly, without even into the system necessarily itself. So constantly keep everything at a ready point.
And that was step one, to make sure we have a second source, because as you said, Central Hudson is doing the dredging in the Hudson River is one thing, but at one point we had oil sands coming down the other side of the river, and it is the mighty Hudson River, which is still a big commercial trafficking area. So you never know what could happen in the river. We thought it was extremely important with the residents, with the hospitals and the colleges, and the amount of people that we serve to have a second source. It won't totally replace what we pull in from the Hudson River now, but that, and we've been working with other towns to make interconnections there with their water sources, so we can all, during an emergency, work with each other to hopefully supply enough water to keep the towns and our neighboring towns working on both sides.
Yeah, well, during the dredging process, we're keeping our tanks as full as possible. When the wells are fully online, we'll be able to get approximately 2 million gallons a day out of them. So it bides time, And that, that's all. That's what you need is time, till you can get things taken care of if something did arise. But as that project's come to a close, and we should be pretty well protected on that end.
Yeah, I want to thank you for really putting the time and effort. That's probably been a 7-month project this year.
Yeah.
And it was just something that needed to be done, and we went in and they said they exercised the wells to make sure everything was up to standards. We've been through the Board of Health, getting everything tested to making sure we meet all the qualifications. They will only be used in emergency. Correct. Is what we need them for, because we still have the water coming through the Hudson River, which is treated at the plant through ozone and chlorine. So this would be just a chlorine treatment. We don't want to mix them unless we absolutely have to.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I want to thank you for today. It was a pleasure, and I hope everybody got an education on our water department, and look forward to seeing you in our next mini-series. We'll be bringing a different department head to discuss going forward on what we're doing in Town Hall and trying to keep the residents informed on a day-to-day basis on what goes on behind the scenes.
All right. Thank you guys very much.